Welcome to the Stories Told podcast. This is episode 17, Farewell, Willow. This is the Stories Told podcast. Two authors talking about stories in movies, TV, and of course, books.
I'm Michael Grayford. I write action-adventure stories in fantasy and sci-fi worlds, sometimes for younger readers and sometimes for adults. And I try to always inject at least a little bit of humor.
And I am author E.W. Barnes, and I write action-adventure, time travel novels, and space opera science fiction. Thousands of years, thousands of worlds. But be forewarned, beyond here, there will be spoilers. Are you ready for the adventure? Let's begin. And welcome back to the Stories Told podcast, where today Mike and I are going to talk about Willow, which we unfortunately have to say farewell to because it has indeed been pulled from Disney+. Sadness.
Yes.
And I was thinking, I don't know how we want to do this. We had decided that we were going to essentially talk about the rest of the series sort of from a higher level perspective than we were looking at the individual episodes. We've got, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 episodes remaining in the series. And so what do you think about that, Mike? What do you think about just sort of talking sort of from the 30,000 foot level about the overarching thoughts for the series rather than looking at individual episodes?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea, to be fair, because we won't be able to rewatch the episodes now. So it's probably better to just look at it from a higher level. We're going to, I'm sure, mention things that are in different episodes because, there's moments where you're going to talk about. But yeah, from a higher view, I think works better.
All right. Awesome. Well, then we'll do that. But first, how are things going with your writing? What have you been working on this week?
What have I been working on? I'm doing some cover design mock-up for first Zara story, and I'm still writing Zara 2. I did a couple chapters this week, less than I had hoped for, but at least it's moving forward. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. How about you?
I have completed another chapter, which I uploaded to my Patreon page. It's for the second book in the Adventures of the Empyrean Guard series. The book is called Ecliptic, and it is available to read in draft form for patrons of the Empyrean Guard. So if people want to read it, they can sign up to support my work on Patreon and read it there. So I got another chapter there uploaded. I haven't done any work on that short story, so I need to sit down and do some work on that here soon. But that's I wanted to make sure I got a chapter up on Patreon, so that's what the focus has been this week.
Great.
And have you encountered any great stories, that you have consumed recently, watched or read or anything?
I'm in the middle of doing a beta read, a friend of mine, on a middle grade horror story, which is actually really fun. It's not out yet, so no one else can read it at this point, but I'm enjoying it.
Fantastic. And I am reading I'm reading the third book in the Stormlight Archive, Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive. I broke down and ordered the next book. So I'm reading it very slowly because I want to, again, savor it, but it's just such a lovely doorstop of a book.
Yeah, I just saw that. He's 50% of the way through whatever the latest one is, book 5 or book 6. I'm not sure.
I think it's 5.
Yeah, 5.
So, and again, still enjoying it. I love the detail. I love the world that's been created. The characters are good. I'm definitely enjoying this read.
Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to reading it. I'll probably just wait until the series is done. I hate catching up and then waiting for the next book.
Yeah. I can't say that I blame you, and that's why I'm reading it slowly. But, again, he says he doesn't expect book 5 to be out for another year. I don't think I can read that slowly. So I'm I'll probably get through book 4 by the end of the summer at the latest, and then I'll have to wait 8 months. So, oh well. All right, so let's talk about the rest of Willow. And not being sure how we want to do this, why don't we do this? What are the things that stood out for you as good as you watched the rest of the series?
Sure. Did you
The
want
first
to
time
give
around?
a summary of the rest of the series, like a very high level view, or do you want to just get right into discussing it?
I don't know. What do you think we should do? What do you think people would appreciate the
I
most?
think you kind of broke my rhythm because I was expecting a summary, so now I have to actually think. Um, we can just talk about it. That's fine. People can look up the summary, I guess, if they want to as well.
We can do a summary. They had adventures. They get to the Immemorial City. Isn't that what it's called? Immemorial
Yeah,
City?
immemorial, I think.
They have a battle with the crone. They win, but the story isn't over yet because they still have to deal with the worm.
Right. So the worm is kind of behind all of the badness, right?
Yeah.
We've been sort of learning over the course of the story. We touched upon it, I think, in the last discussion. Like, what is the hierarchy here? Who's the crone? Where did she come from? How does it relate to the worm? So we kind of learned that over the rest of the series.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they ended the series in such a way that the story was finished, but that they could jump into a new story.
Yes.
So, do you think there's any more details that we should include in a summary of the rest of the series?
I think that's good. We'll probably hit on some more stuff as we talk about it.
I agree.
Say at a high level, one of the things I liked is that they expanded the world and the mythology of the Willow universe.
Yes.
It's like the movie was like a one-off thing, and it's like, oh, there's Willow versus the evil witch, kind of, right? That was pretty much it. Now we learned that the evil witch was just sort of a pawn or a player on the dark side of things, with the crone being sort of the one above her, and then the crone being some kind of I don't know, not a manifestation, but another one, I guess, of the worm. The worm seems to be like this evil force, whereas Alora Dannon is sort of like a representative of the good force, who, like you mentioned last time, seems to be like some kind of entity that will be reborn when she dies. So
Yeah.
evil force is trying to lock her away rather than kill her and risk, oh, she's going to be born again. Just seal her off somewhere, lock her in a vault, and then you won't have to deal with this conflict every time the bad guys can just do what they want to do. Am I getting that right?
I think so. Yeah. That was the way I understand it as well.
So I like that. I like that they're expanding the world. Though it does sound a bit like, with Alora Dannon coming back, and there's like this dark force and the good force, it sounds a little bit like Star Wars again. Like she's bringing balance back to the force, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine. It was just kind of funny when you realize what's going on. It's sort of like there's Darth Vader, and then there's the Emperor, and it's like the Emperor's representative of the Sith, and here's the worm. It just a lot of parallels there. I like the fact that the world opened up.
Yeah.
I have a few other things that I like, but why don't I switch to you? What is one thing that you liked?
That was my first note, was the fantasy elements and the creativity throughout. The opening up of the world, I think, is a really great way of saying it. And the things in the world that we saw, I thought were really fun. I love the what was it called? The Shattered Sea. What a creative thing. And we went back to Nockmar. So we got to see Bavmorda's castle again. We were in forests and got to see, characters that lived in the forests. We got to see what was essentially like the caves of the orcs. It was like Moria. And but didn't seem to be like knockoffs of other fantasy stories. They seemed unique and creative to this world, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we touched on this early on, like in episode 1 or 2, maybe, it wasn't that long ago, but when we were first discussing, was exactly that point. The fact that they sort of expanded the fantasy elements of the universe. Willow, I think when we talked about the movie, it seemed fairly straightforward, right? And one of the complaints I guess I had about it, or one of the things I thought they could improve, was having more creativity, right? When you compare it to something like Star Wars, it didn't have a lot in the movie. It was sort of a traditional, simple fantasy fairy tale type story. You're right. This series has a lot of new elements, and I thought they were fun. I thought they fit into the world for the most part. Yeah, I agree. I really like that as well. I also liked the
I agree.
return of Mad Mardigan. as such as it was, obviously we didn't get much there. It was only his voice speaking. But it was neat to see. Okay, he's still alive, presumably, or she's his daughter is imagining things. But I think he's still alive somewhere, right? He's trapped in some place or dimension we don't really understand at this point. At least from what I remember, they don't explain it fully. It was good. It was good to. It sounded just like him. Surprised. I guess it was played by his son. Yeah, I think so, because I saw his son was credited for that role. So he must have. He maybe very much sounds like him, or they did some modification to his voice or something. But I thought it worked pretty well.
Yeah, I thought maybe they used a similar technology as to what they used in Top Gun Maverick. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But if you saw his son credited, then that makes a lot of sense.
Of those two things.
And maybe they exactly used his son as the base and then modified it slightly.
If this had moved forward, or if it does move forward, I wouldn't mind if you had like his son playing the character, like whatever realm he got stuck in, he didn't age. Like now his son takes up that role.
Right.
I don't know if his son's an actor or how much he's done. But it might be interesting. I did hear that. I didn't hear. I saw something where Ron Howard said they might be interested in doing another movie to kind of wrap the story up. That would be cool. I don't.
Interesting.
Know the practicality or likelihood of that. Anyway, what's something else that you liked?
I also really liked how Elora Danon's power developed throughout the entire series. She went from I just make muffins to finding her power and then completely not knowing how to control it, which makes sense. And then she started to really come into her own with it, and I really enjoyed that. You got got to see sort of like got an idea of how powerful she really could be given the time.
Yeah, that's true. You see a blip of it, really. And
and if she had time to continue to develop that, another season to really come into her own with her power, she could be really a great, interesting character with that power and how she uses it.
Obviously, where this would go next is battle against the worm or whatever, the next higher level minion of that thing is, and she would need to be more powerful, most likely. That could be a good showdown again.
And I also really liked the power that Graydon was developing, sort of not like magical power, but just sort of coming into his own of what he brings of value to the table.
I agree.
He had a good arc. Both Elora and Graydon had really interesting arcs.
I was starting to like his character a lot toward the end.
How about you? What other things did you enjoy?
Let's see, from characters, I liked the Christian Slater character.
Oh, yeah, that was where I was going next.
I will say it's like, here's a Mad Mardigan type character again. I feel like they keep going back to that.
Yes.
But it was fun. I always like Christian Slater. He plays quirky roles. Yeah.
Yeah, the performance I thought was outstanding.
In addition to where Graydon's character was going, I also like they're giving us more background for him, like what happened in his past, and there was like some darkness going on there, which I don't think they've ever fully explained in this series, where it's like he killed his brother, but it was like some kind of possession or something. I don't know. I don't remember if they fully explained that, or if it was just like a hint as to, okay, there's something that's been latched onto this guy for all this time.
That's how it came across to me too. He had been possessed by evil, and then that evil made him kill his brother,
Yeah.
and then he had to live with that.
Yeah, it added some depth because when we first see him, it's just like, okay, it's just kind of this quiet guy who's not really interested in. Yeah,
A little
he's certainly
nerdy.
not the charismatic, charming type. He's not really interested in adventure or anything. And then we get a little bit more about, okay, there's more to this guy. He kind of grows into his role. Also, like the
Yeah, I agree.
Kenneth,
I agree.
the mud creature that pulled them across the shattered sea. It was a cool touch.
Yes. And the relationship he had with
Yeah,
this
yeah.
creature, that added more depth to him as
It was a
well.
fun idea, yeah, and get to see him connect with something.
Yeah.
All right. What else?
Something. So, that was pretty much it. There were bubbles of fun in what, unfortunately for me, as the series progressed, sort of became a bit of a slog.
I think I have more on my what they could improve list than what I liked list.
Yeah. And for me, from that high level evaluation, the problem with the story, with the whole sort of first season, I think rests again on not knowing what to do with the characters. Because while Alora and Graydon had interesting arcs, no one else did.
Yeah, this was the last note that I had written. You see this exemplified, the climax of the season. I didn't really dig, and it's because of that. Right, usually in a story, well, certainly in a hero's journey type story, character, in pivotal moments in the climax, shows that they've learned something as a result of their journey, and that's the thing that helps them win. Right, they overcome a flaw or a weakness or some lie that they're telling themselves. You get to see how they've grown past that and applied the lesson they've learned, and they've internalized it. And I didn't see that here at all. It was just, okay, we have this battle and they win.
Exactly. And I wrote down,
Exactly.
I liked it, but it wasn't earned.
Yeah.
Over and over again. That's what I wrote. The battle with, all these things that happened. I like these scenes. I like this battle. I liked what was going on, but
like
it
the
wasn't
writers had cool
earned.
ideas for settings and events and magic and the world stuff that they added. They didn't develop it with the characters in mind. The characters just kind of went through these different things, and those things didn't necessarily challenge them or change them. And they had these kind of almost fake conflicts between characters that, again, for the most part, didn't push them somewhere.
Right. And their adventures didn't really push them, except for Alora and Graydon.
Like the character who we're getting invested in, and we see that he's growing and changing and stepping up, and then they banish him to some other realm, and it was kind of weird because they had already poisoned him, right, with whatever the evil was that he got stabbed, or I forget what it was, but he started having the same transformation into to evil when he got injured, right? And they do whatever they need to do, the exorcism type thing, and they rescue him from that. Then he's just banished at the end. So it made that whole rescue of him seem kind of pointless. Go through all this. Okay, we got the character back, and then now he's gone.
I have that written through my notes too. What's the point? What's the point? What's the point?
Anytime stories do that, it's very frustrating. It's like, oh, we go through all this, and then it didn't matter because now they're back in the same position.
It's a shame. To me, I wrote a little note here and called it a comedy of stupid, because they're not learning from any of their experiences, and they keep making unsmart decisions. Yes. I don't know if that's a word, but I just made it up. It's a word now.
Yeah. Some of the characters, I just never really grasped onto, particular Kit and Eric. I think for me, I felt their casting wasn't, and their direction wasn't that good. I just seemed to stick out in this story as like not fitting in with everything else.
Though I will say this, I actually liked Eric when he became evil. I actually thought, okay, this is interesting. And then he became, that added a realistic and real stakes conflict to the story. when evil Eric confronts his sister and his girlfriend. That was interesting. I was like,
You ever
okay, how's
watch
this gonna go? And then
Pitch Meeting?
it was resolved so easily.
It's like you ever watch Pitch Meeting? It's this YouTube. It's this guy. I think his name's
No.
Ryan George. He does these fake pitch meetings about movies and TV shows, where he's a writer pitching his idea to a producer, right? And he plays both parts, and he's always like pointing out the silly things that are in the story. And one of his repeating bits is he'll talk about how these characters are going to get in this like really, really dangerous situation. And it's going to be awful. The producer guy says, well, that sounds horrible. It must be really hard for them to get out of that situation. And he says, no, it's super easy, barely an inconvenience. And that's exactly what I thought of here. It's like, that was easy. We're done. We're out of that situation.
Yeah.
I felt that a couple of times through this story. It was like, oh, this is going to be tough. I'm like, nah, barely an inconvenience.
A couple of things I would have liked to have seen is they resolved the problem with Valentine, who was Jade's sort of mentor, who was infected with the evil. They resolved his danger really early on in the story. I think it was the third episode, right? I think it was the Battle of the Slaughtered Lamb. And he caught up with them, and they had to fight it out, sword fighting, which was cool. It was fun to watch. And then he lost, and he asked Jade to kill him. And that again I think could have been something that happened at the end, where he's following them. He's on their heels. He's part of the danger that they're trying to escape, running across the shattered sea with Valentine at their heels, not far. All of their decisions are based on the fact that they're being pursued. And then the battle at the end could have been, Valentine and Jade battling it out then, and then having the noble sacrifice. That was painful.
Along these lines as well, which was when you see that moment, right, where she has to kill him, and she's really upset afterwards, right? She's sobbing. She's, it's obviously had a huge impact to her. To me, from a writing perspective, that was telling and not showing, because we never saw any background between these characters. We had no understanding of their attachment. So therefore, when it happened, we didn't really feel anything other than sort of a superficial sense of, oh, this is awful, because that's what they told us to feel. You know what I mean? If we had seen some more of that throughout, like she's trying to convince him to change, and remember when we chained together, something, right? Done some flashbacks. If they had earned that moment, it would have been so much more powerful. I think you're right. If they had given us more time with that, they could have done that.
Even at the very least, conversations while they're running about what can we expect from Valentine. Well, when we were training, he taught us X, Y, and Z, so we should be on the lookout for these tactics. And that would have given us that background and that level of understanding with her. And she could have conveyed because she's a really good actress. The actress who played Jade is a really good actress. She could have conveyed the pain of having to look at him as an enemy. And, that could have been done. And then we would have earned that emotional catastrophe at the end when she had to mercy kill him. So it was just stuff like that.
There's a good idea they had there, but just didn't execute well.
And then there was a scene one of the scenes that I actually found very frustrating and difficult was when Alora escaped from Valentine and went into the forest and found the woodcutters.
Yeah.
And then they were promptly murdered.
The woodcutter characters thought they were cool, and it was like, oh, these badass women are gonna, help her out. It's gonna be great. And then again, it was like, nah, they're dead, and we moved on. Yeah, it was just, I don't know.
Exactly. And that's the exact question I was asking. How does this move this story forward? Because if it's supposed to show you that they're going to kill anyone to get to Alora, we already know that. We knew that when the Gales came into the castle and killed people to get Eric. We knew that when Valentine made eviled all his guys that came with him to find Alora Dannon. We already know this, so we don't need to see people brutally murdered to prove that these guys are dangerous. It stood out for me as such
I didn't get that.
It was just, I just thought it was terrible.
It was a weird scene too. When it started, it was like, what is she? Is this? It felt like some Hansel and Gretel fairy tale thing. At the start, I was like, what's going on here? Are these people evil? What is this? Are these two
Yeah,
people living out in the woods somewhere? It was really weird. And you're like, okay, they seem pretty cool. They're standing up. They're going to help her. This is going to be great.
yeah.
And then no, that was it.
Once again, if they had added these people to the journey and they came along because of their allegiance to Elora Danan and the Empress, and then they died later on defending her, we would have had, again, the investment in them. And that would have made, again, raising the stakes because we had been invested in them. We barely got a chance to be invested in them before they were just killed.
The one who was more of the fighter, right? If she had actually like fended off some bad guys or taken one of them out over the course of that journey, like, oh, you grow more attached to that character. Then when she dies, it means something.
It was a very strange, and I have to say, I kind of feel the same way about the Allagash character.
Just later, yeah.
Great performance, loved him. I loved the performance with Hubert and Anne. They were great characters, so dynamic, so alive. But what was the point? And I kind of felt the same way with Allagash.
Yeah,
very great performance, great character.
There were two different types of writers in this series, where you had the one sort of really old-fashioned TV series writer from back in the day, where every episode was just its own story and that was it. And then you had the other, like, more modern writers, where it's like it's a continuing narrative across the series. It seemed like there was competition, right? So you have these characters who come in for one episode and then they're gone.
Yeah.
Why?
A really astute observation, because I did not pick that up. But now that you've said that, that's exactly right. It's sort of like this weird mishmash of arc storytelling versus what I call ship in the bottle episodes. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know. It started to work less and less, I think,
through
the series.
It was, and it has such an auspicious beginning. Every episode I watched, I was sort of like, oh, this is getting worse and worse.
Right. So what Kit went through in the series, like, how did she change? I guess
she accepted Elora. That was it. That was it. I hate you because you're better than me, and you're now the more important than me. And okay, I'll work with you.
More like just getting used to someone than like changing something core to who you are that like helps at the end. I don't know.
I think they tried to do a little bit of, my father left me because of you, and my father liked you more than me because you're more, but it just fell flat
for her. She's the princess. She's like one of the main characters. The show started off with her. The very first scene, she was going to get married, and then that's all we got.
Actually, I pulled up an image to put up on YouTube when we publish this podcast. That is of sort of the Willow poster that they produced. Next to Willow himself, she's the largest character, and she's in the forefront. And they did nothing with her.
Looking back, there's also a few things that I wanted some understanding of. I mean, these are smaller issues, but they kind of, it goes back to world building, I guess. Introduce certain elements, and I felt like they were just there to be cool. I didn't understand why. The 4 different twisted humans that come after them, right, in the first episode. And you see them throughout. It's like, what were those things? Like, why were there 4 different ones? Did they like combine together to be some ultimate power? Like, it was just, we just wanted these 4 weird creatures to attack them.
Made a note of that as well. They were like the cuirass that.
Right.
It's just such a throwaway story until the end, and then okay, we could use it for the battle. And like the things happening in Nockmaar, they all felt so throwaway, and barely tied back to. Again, like I said, it wasn't really earned. If we had gotten, again, sort of building on all these interesting things, so that at the end it all comes together like a really cool puzzle, and you're like, oh, okay. That's very satisfying as a consumer of stories, to have the puzzle pieces fall into place.
Yeah, there was a lot of potential here and promise.
And that just unfortunately didn't happen here.
But yeah, could have been better.
So any other thoughts?
I guess so. I
And
guess
could have been better.
ultimately,
Is that going to be your final assessment of Willow?
I would say I still liked it more than not. But that's probably just because it's in the Willow universe and it's fantasy. Like and there's enough cool little things in there that would make me continue watching it, at least for a bit. But it doesn't. If I'm more objective about it, I don't think it's earned. I'd probably give it a 6
Yeah.
overall. But that's a positive bias. See where it goes. I think they did some cool character setup, even though they didn't deliver it. I'm hoping that's because there was more to come and they had planned for additional growth and things like that. And just to see what other cool things they put in the world. But it wouldn't be super enthusiastic. I wouldn't be pushing this, for other people to watch. It's probably why it's been removed from Disney Plus.
Maybe,
Well,
or
how about
maybe
you?
like
Where
we
do you
talked
put
about,
it?
they're trying to generate interest. I would give it a 5. And I would also continue to watch it, but it would be different. I would be very sort of lukewarm. I would be like, okay, I'll watch it, but if I'm like watching Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus, I'm going to
Yeah,
watch
that's a
that
good point.
first.
There's a lot of other things I'd rather see
And then after I
first.
watch that, I'll watch Willow.
And probably for me, it bounced around up and down a little bit. And at the end, the reason I rated it a 6 is because of that. It's like I would watch it more. I would watch it again, not again, but I would watch a new season of it because I have a slight positivity toward it. And admittedly, it's probably just because it's a decent fantasy world. I want to see more of it. That's about it.
Yeah.
This was another thing. I think
We
Willow,
like Willow.
the
I like
character,
Willow.
right? You had a good actor there. I think Warwick Davis did a good job bringing him back to the screen. And some of the other characters I think did really well. Then you've got Kit and Eric and even Elora Danan. They were like, to me, adequate. I think Elora in particular, they needed an actor with more charisma and more presence to really sell that this is someone very special. She was just a competent actress. She was fine, but I wasn't like, oh, this person is the one, right? This is the Neo, You can have that.
Yeah, I think
What's
that's
coming
it.
up next?
What's coming up next? Well, we are going to leave the realm of fantasy and enter the realm of science fiction.
Yes, I'm really excited about getting back into the Stargate world. I haven't seen it since it came out, pretty much. So we'll be discussing an episode from the first season. I don't know that it's my favorite episode. You might have already covered that, but it's been a while since I've seen any of the series at all. So this is one that stood out for me as one of the better episodes. So hopefully, we'll see. We'll talk about it next time.
We thank everyone for once again joining us for this episode of the Stories Told podcast. The link to Michael's website is in the show notes below, as well as my website and the audiobooks that are available on this YouTube channel. And as always, we very much appreciate everyone who likes and subscribes and clicks the notification bell. Very much for joining us, and thank you, Mike. Talk to you soon.